Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Chain Driven. Today we're going to talk about this bike. So let's get going. Many of you, all 17 of you, probably know this is my KTM. It's a 2014 KTM 690 Enduro R. I bought it new last year. It's got about 11,000 clicks on it, all put on by me. So today we're going to talk about some of the things that I love about the bike and some of the things that I hate about the bike. Obviously every bike's got some pros and cons. KTMs are no different. So we're going to start with things I love about the bike. And there are a lot. From the power, to the agility, to the durability. We're going to take this path. I've never been out here before, so please forgive me. It won't be a quick trip. So the thing is, if you want a true dual sport bike, I think that this is the one for you. If you're a big guy. The reason why I have owned smaller dual sport bikes than this. And the thing is, off-road, they're great. But on the highway, horrible. And the thing is, I do use this bike to go to work, so I need it to be okay on the highway. Work is about an hour each way for me on a highway, not a 400 series highway, but I need to be able to easily go 100 clicks for an hour at a time. This bike will do that. And then, as you can see, you can use this to go to work, and then you can use it to go do some light single track. Yeah, this isn't massive single track, but and I definitely am not super quick, but you can do it, especially if you're my size. 280 plus pounds on this bike. It's pretty amazing. These mirrors, not great mirrors, but for whatever reason, they seem to be relatively durable. I ding them off trees almost every ride. We'll see if we can hit a few today. And while I have replaced one of the mirrors, I was able to weld it back together and use some thread followers to get the threads back to the point where it'd screw back in. Unfortunately, the weld job I did break due to the vibrations. I replaced it with a stock mirror. In the future, I would go with the double take mirrors. So the bike is durable, which is a good thing, because one of the cons, which I guess we'll talk about right now, is the expense of the bike. This bike is an expensive off-road bike. It's basically sort of a middle ground between a street bike and an off-road bike. Plastics aren't as expensive as they are on a true street sport bike or whatever you've got, but they're definitely more expensive than some of the other bikes that you will take and see off-road. The other expense is really maintenance on this bike. On my Suzuki, $30 oil change at most. This thing, 2 filters, 2 screens, synthetic oil, costs about $100 in an oil change. The good thing about this bike is that the maintenance intervals aren't in 15-hour increments like you might see on the 500 or 450 XEs. The maintenance interval is 10,000 clicks on this bike. So you could theoretically go a whole season without changing the oil. The other thing I love about this bike is that people love the bike and it does grab attention. That can be a bit of a pro and a con. And sometimes you're just out for a nice ride and you might get some attention that is a bit unwanted. So this bike is really big for back here. I can see why most people would not want this bike back here. It's tall, it's heavy, it's really, really tall. I'm 6'3". I can flat foot this thing. It's hard. And if you ever happen to do anything like balance training on a log or on a curb like I have to do, if you happen to lean the bike the wrong way, even that 4 or 6 inch drop, due to the height of the bike, can make it so you cannot catch the bike. This bike is a smidge over 300 pounds, I believe. I don't know the exact specs, I don't really care. So compared to some of the other bikes, like a 450, you literally have an extra 65 pounds. And it sits tall, so some people really don't like that. If you're into tight, hardcore single track, this is not the bike for you. One thing that's not great on this bike is the steering lock. And I have the steering locks adjusted in as far as possible without hitting the radiator guards on either side. Even with that, I was surprised about how poorly this bike turns. I have heard of some people lowering the triple clamp a little bit to help with that steering geometry. I haven't played with that at all. It might make some significant improvements, it might not. For me, I don't do enough really tight stuff to worry about that extra, smidge of steering. But I can see where some people, especially if you're into this really tight off-track, single track stuff, could be really difficult. Another thing I don't really like about this is the gas cap. In the back, behind your butt, good some of the time, traps a tremendous amount of dirt in there if it happens to be muddy at all. And so you wind up either cleaning off the bike before you fill it with fuel, or basically waiting until the light comes on, which isn't a great strategy for me. So just the way the actual fuel cap is designed, it tends to trap dirt around the filler, which is really annoying at certain points in time. People who put a back rack on this indicate that you do have to basically take everything off the bike if you put anything on the bike rack in order to fill it with gas. That would irritate me because the gas tank is small. I get 220 clicks out of a gas tank, but as you can tell, I'm not a real speed demon, not overly aggressive. I had a friend I was talking to about this bike. He hated it. Bought it new, rode it, put on 500 or 600 clicks. While he didn't mind the rear suspension, he claimed to have hated the front suspension. He said that no matter how he set it up, it would deflect off of big rocks, roots, that kind of stuff. I don't have that problem too much, but again, I'm not going that quick. And I wouldn't really know because I've never really had performance bikes. Suzuki's, DRs, that kind of stuff. Nothing that was in this category, as you can tell from the way I ride. The fuel range isn't great. Gas cap's not in a great spot. But if you want a true dual sport bike that you can fly up to 140, 150, even 160, this bike still has power at 140 clicks. It's maybe not super fast, but it's still quicker than I've ever really needed, even at some of those speeds and that kind of stuff. Some people believe that the bike runs a little warm. In my opinion, better a little warm than a little cold. Current research shows about 95% of all your engine wear happens in your driveway. Saying that probably doesn't make much sense. Well, the theory goes that whenever your engine is cold, it wears a lot quicker. Whenever you have cold, hard metal on metal, you're going to wear that very quickly. And so whenever you start your bike, it's the worst thing you can do. There is no oil, and you just have cold, hard metal on metal. Conversely, warm, softer metal doesn't wear quite as fast. can mold and shape, bend and conform a little bit better. So the theory is that for every degree your engine is colder than recommended operating temperature, you are twice as fast for every degree hotter. You know what I mean? So again, if you want to get some really maximum life out of your engine, a tiny bit hotter is better than a tiny bit colder. And so the thing is, this bike does have a radiator. Comes on, it works relatively well. Keeps the bike at a nice temperature. I don't have to worry about it. Other things I love about the bike is the montability. You want an adventure bike, throw on a big tank, throw on a back rack, upgrade the seat bolts and stuff a little bit, take it around the world. Durable, especially with the maintenance intervals. You can take this for a long trip and not have to worry about, you know, changing oil on the side of the road, some of that kind of stuff. Vibrations. Some people claim to hate the vibrations of this. The first 1,000 clicks, I wasn't sure. Next to first 1,000 clicks, it did shake a fair bit, especially with the break-in oil that it came with. However, at the 1,000 click mark, when I changed to synthetic, I did notice a pretty significant decrease in the vibration that I noticed continued to decline to the 5,000 click mark. At the point now, the vibrations don't bother me at all. And so either I've got used to them and it doesn't bother me, or the actual engine has calmed down and seated in a little bit and it isn't quite so rough. So I tend to like that. People who really hate the vibrations, wait until at least 5,000 clicks before you make your mind up. One thing I do not like about this bike is the seat. The stock seat is a 2x4. Actually, if it was a 2x4, it wouldn't be that bad. But it is a brittle, prone to breakage 2x4 that costs about $220 to replace. I've gone through a seat already, through no fault of my own. Basically, I'm sure just with my size, you know, I took a bump relatively hard, cracked the seat. It's a fiberglass carbon fiber pan, which was in 2014 reduced in size to be able to fit the ABS electronics underneath the seat. Therefore, the pan got a little smaller, a little less durable, and so I will be putting the seat on this bike, just because this one's not comfortable and it's prone to damage. So I'm going to keep it as a backup and get rid of the other stuff. The ABS works great on the street. You can hammer it, you don't have to worry about it. You can't lock up the front brake really. You can't lock up the front brake, it'll just sort of keep releasing. However, on the dirt, when it's slippery, it feels really odd. And there's certain places it does not work well. So for instance, if you hop down off a curb, for whatever reason, that particular motion plays with the ABS sensor a little bit, and you almost always have an instance where the brake calipers are releasing, and you can feel that obviously on the bike. Even things like dirt, going down hills on dirt, you can feel the calipers moving. And I don't know the exact stats, but I tend to think that off-road, my brain is a bit better than this ABS. I'm probably wrong. It's probably just some sort of psychosomatic type of thing. But I really like the ability to lock up at least the rear brake and drag it around to steer with the back of the bike. This bike is so heavy that you do sometimes need to use that rear brake to slide that back end around. Would I buy this bike again? Absolutely. But there are a few things you should know before you buy this bike. You're probably going to want to put a different seat on it. You might want to put the ABS dongle on it so that you can have just the front tire with ABS. the bolts that hold the fuel tank are apparently a bit weak and can cause problems. So Rally Raid makes a bolt upgrade kit that you should put on. And I would not recommend ever doing 2-up without that. So if you're into 2-up, this bike is not a good bike without a few modifications and upgrades. If you do like 2-up and you do put that on it, this bike has got lots of power to pull 2 people around. So there's some pros and cons. Again, as a pure off-road bike, I'm not sure I would like this. And I would like to have a much smaller, pure dirt bike, like a 300XC, maybe even a 450 EX. Transmission of the thing is amazing. 6 gears, shifts really, really well, smoothly. Hydraulic clutch is awesome, super light. Even the clutch levers have breakaway spots so that if you drop it a couple times, you should get away pretty. One thing you will notice, again, for the first probably 3,000 or 4,000 clicks, you'll notice some missed shifts. I miss shifts between first and second, which is kind of normal. Even on my Suzuki, I'd occasionally miss shifts. I'm not pro, I haven't practiced this kind of stuff. I miss some. This bike, I would occasionally miss some between 4th and 5th, and 5th and 6th, which was odd for me. I haven't missed a shift in literally thousands of clicks now. So whatever happens to the bike, it tends to wear in and possibly seat a little bit better. I have no idea how that works, really. But I know that it was a little annoying for the first bit, and then since that point in time, it actually only crossed my mind once I realized it hadn't happened in a really, really long time. Oh, one other thing I would say about this bike, the brake pedal is made of spaghetti rather than metal. You're going to want to upgrade the brake pedal relatively right away. You touch a root, a rock, bends right into the case of the engine, and you can damage it pretty severely, pretty quickly. And that has happened to me on a couple of times. Because it's spaghetti, it's pretty easy to bend back out with a couple of pliers. But I do worry about the possible damage to the case of the engine, so I would recommend upgrading that relatively quick. I've now put on Metzler Karoo 3s on front and rear. Brought the tire pressure to either 20 for on-road, 15 for light, dual track, and I've gone to as low as 10 on single track like this kind of stuff. You do notice that with the Metzlers, the tire pressure makes a big difference to how they handle. The lower the tire pressure, the better it handles. However, the risks are pinch flats and some of that kind of stuff. I've never had a pinch flat on this bike because I've really never pushed it that hard. I'm trying to work on basically finessing and being smooth rather than, applying brute power and ripping through stuff. So anyway, that's really my review of this bike. I've put on 10,000 clicks, and I would buy it again. Oops. You do get a few of those little guys every once in a while. I've never ridden this track before, so please excuse the slowness. I'll try and get back to a little more open track, and I'll try and warm up before some of the next videos. So, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again. Until then, stay driven.